everybody? Welcome to Twins Ticket Live here on Friday. Happy Friday. Happy St. Patrick's Day. As you can see by the little teaser here, I'm going to give my 2023 Twins record prediction. Going to talk about some of a couple polls that I put out also on the Twins season. We're also going to discuss today's Twins spring training game. We're also going to discuss a transaction that happened today. And right below you here, I've got the WBC game on. So, maybe if some stuff happens in here, maybe we'll live react to that too, especially if it's some of these Twins players on that Puerto Rico team. But as mentioned first, I think, makes sense just to kick things off with today's spring training game. Twins lost to the Orioles. There was not a broadcast of this game today, so I do not have highlights to share with you. But Kyle Farmer, all three of the runs actually on home runs. Kyle Farmer hit 2 home runs. Michael A. Taylor homered. So the new guy's doing some damage. And then on the pitching side, Tyler Mahle had kind of a rough game. He gave up back-to-back home runs. His velo was down. How much of that is, him just kind of having a spring start and not going hard? We'll see. We've seen his velo look good this spring. Did not look good today. He got roughed up a little bit. Gave up 4 runs in 3 2/3 innings. Danny Coulombe had another scoreless inning with 2 strikeouts. Kind of one of the favorites for Sire Fort Myers. And Oliver Ortega also threw 2 shutout innings. A guy who I'd mentioned early on, and then he gave up a home run to the first batter he faced. I think he was my pick coming into camp for Sire Fort Myers. Gave up a home run to the first guy he faced. I don't know that he's given up a run since then. And these guys this is something to watch. This is something to watch how this bullpen shakes out, how these relievers perform, because we might have an opportunity for basically whoever wins Sire Fort Myers to potentially make the opening day roster now. There is a path carved out. So we'll pull up the chat, get things kind of back to usual. What's up, everybody? Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for tuning in to the stream. So again, that was just sort of the quick rundown of today's spring training game. Kind of teased that we have an interesting transaction to discuss. And I think it's a little bit under the radar. The Twins lost a player today. Let's pull this up here. Let me prep this. Get this a little bigger here because I know when we got the chat pulled up, everything gets real small. There we are. All right. Let's flip this around. There we go. So where we are here is at Roster Resource, which is hosted by Fangraphs. And as you can see up at the top left here, Dennis Santana was lost off waivers to the Mets today. If you're kind of having a hard time remembering that name, I definitely don't blame you. Wasn't here long. The Twins claimed him off waivers from the Braves, and now he has been lost to waivers to the Mets. He was a guy that I had been projecting to be in the opening day bullpen because he's out of options. So, the Twins claimed him. I figured, well, if they claim this guy, he's out of options, they're probably going to want to keep him around for a while. He did have a few spring outings for the Twins. They must not have been particularly impressed by that. Or maybe this was just their plan all along, is that we'll claim this guy and then we'll try to sneak him through waivers later. But the Mets, maybe not a surprise that the Mets claimed him, given the unfortunate situation with Edwin Diaz. So I guess at the end of the day, it's a happy story for Dennis Santana. It's a happy story for the Mets. I think it's a better situation for him to be landing in, given that, sudden opportunity there. Not that he's going to close out games for them or anything, but I think he's got a good chance to make that bullpen. And obviously the Mets needed another arm. For the Twins, again, like I said, mentioning some of those Sire Fort Myers candidates, this creates a really interesting opportunity. We're actually going to look at this. This is the first time I've peeked at this since the transaction. I really like this, though. Dennis. Man, I got Dennis on the mind. Jason R. Martinez, I think his name is the guy who runs, kind of puts all these together at Roster Resource. And it's just a great layout of everything. And let's see who he has projected now in that final bullpen spot. He's got Randy Dobnak in there. Why not? Hey. I don't think that's who I would go with, but it's possible. It's possible, especially if the Twins want like a length guy. But yeah, this projected opening day roster had Dennis Santana in it earlier too, so I was kind of in line with that. I don't think I would predict that Dobnak would make the opening day roster. We'll see. And we should say too, there's going to be a lot of moves going on. There's going to be a lot of guys being, guys who were out of options, not making teams, going on waivers. So it's possible whoever makes this last spot isn't currently in the organization right now. Completely possible. But I would say right now, it's going to come down to potentially whoever has the most impressive spring training. Really, I honestly think that could happen between, we mentioned Danny Coulomb and Oliver Ortega. Both those guys pitched today and pitched well. Both those guys have major league experience. Another guy who has major experience, Jeff Hoffman. I don't think his raw numbers are as impressive. So he's not a guy, he's a guy I've mentioned a few times, but he's not a guy in that Sire Fort Myers picture. But his stuff has looked really good. He's been throwing like 97, I think 98 even, throwing really hard. A guy who has pitched in the two worst environments in all of baseball, all of Major League Baseball, Jeff Hoffman. I think the only two teams that he's pitched for are the Rockies and the Reds. Just two terrible places to pitch. Not to say that that's been holding him back from a career as an elite reliever. But we're talking about the last guy in the bullpen here. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to see what becomes of this opening. So, you'd usually say, oh, you lost the guy for nothing. That's not good. And that's usually the case. But I think Dennis Santana leaving the organization opens up the door for some fun stuff to discuss, at least. And speaking of which, that's sort of maybe the theme of the rest of today's episode here is fun stuff to discuss. Because I've been dragging my feet a little bit on a record prediction. We are going to get to that. But first, I do want to pull up some of the projections. And since we were at Fangraphs, we'll just start there. We switch this back around. All right. And so this is the projected standings at Fangraphs. You can see the first column of data is the 2022 information. And then the 2023 information in the middle here. And so projections at Fangraphs have Cleveland winning 84 games, the Twins winning 83 games, and the White Sox winning 80 games. So very tight in the AL Central. Let's take a look over at one more I want to bring up is Baseball Prospectus. And let me make this a little bit more viewable here. Kind of a similar situation, but a lot more separation. A lot more separation between the top two teams and Chicago. You can see here, they have Cleveland at 88.1, Minnesota at 87.6. So, man, like razor thin. If we're rounding up, this is a tie. This is a tie if we're rounding that up. Razor thin. But then Chicago quite a bit back of those top two teams. And, projection-wise, I guess I don't know what I would say. I'm not a betting man, so I don't know what I would say which of these two projections I feel is maybe more accurate, but kind of in my mind, I think this kind of is more of where I'm gravitating toward in terms of how this picture looks. We'll put it that way. Maybe not exactly these names in this order. But I mean, Chicago could kind of bounce back. They do the top of their roster is pretty good. They have a lot of guys that have been good in the past, and they're not so distant at all past. And it's not like they're guys that kind of trailed off due to age. There's guys who are kind of around their prime ages that could bounce back, like your Giolitos, your Yohan Moncadas. So it's not that I can't envision them challenging for the division crown. I just can kind of see more bad outcomes for them, kind of like last year. They haven't really done a really good job of building up a lot of depth, which has sort of been the story with them for a while now. And then Detroit and Kansas City. Both of these teams do have some, and especially Kansas City, do have some nice young talent. But yeah, the projections are usually fairly conservative. Like, they're not going to go too far one direction or the other. So to see these teams projected for 97, 98 losses, that's rough. That is rough. But been stalling long enough. I think the Twins win 88 games in 2023. That is the number I'm putting on them. That is above the over-under for them right now by quite a bit. We'll get to that in a sec. Last offseason, I actually took the under. And I correctly predicted that they were going to win 78 games. Now, did I get the rest of my prediction on how they'd get there right? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The way I saw the season unfolding was completely different than it actually did. But I did get the number right, so I got to get some credit there, right? I think last offseason there was some positivity going for the Twins. I think the over-under was like 80 or 81. I like that. 88. Let's highlight that one. That's one to highlight. The number of wins necessary for time travel. Target destination 1991. I love it. Now, what does that mean in the AL Central? Oh, 88 wins. Where does that put you? I think that puts them, and again, I agree with how tight these projections are. I would guess Cleveland's going to win 86 games. So a 2-game difference between these two teams is what I'm predicting right now. I think it's going to be this balanced schedule is going to be tough on both of these teams, on this whole division. This balanced schedule is going to be tough. So that's kind of where, predicting a AL Central champion who does not win 90 games comes from. I like both of these teams. But, if we're being honest, this isn't a good division. It hasn't really been a good division. So, yeah, I got the Twins winning 88, Cleveland winning 86. I just feel like this Twins team, and, it's been talked about a lot this offseason for good reason. It's so much more disaster-proof than it's been. And I've seen people say, like, if they can stay healthy. Man, if you tell me the Twins are going to be, like, in the top 5 of the least IL days, I would be like, this is a 95-win team. I'm baking in, missed time from quite a few guys at 88 wins. I think this team's true. Like, again, if they could have some of the fewest IL days in baseball, this team could be insanely good. I love the way the starting rotation is shaping out. No, there's not like a game one starter, an ace. There's some guys that maybe can take that step there. Yes, there are some concerns with guys right now, with Tyler Mahle just today with his velo down. With Kenta Maeda having his last outing on a backfield. We don't really know what to think about that. His command looked really shaky the last time we saw him. It's going to be it's just going to be an ever-going thing with those guys, I think, potentially. With Mahle's shoulder being, very mysterious. One day he looks good, the next day he looks so questionable. We'll see how that develops. But they got Bailey Ober, who's looked amazing as the 6th starter, lots of depth. We've kind of touched on these things already. The bullpen, I think, is a lot better than a lot of other people think because, again, hopefully, fingers crossed, people, whenever I talk about the upside and the potential of this bullpen, everybody's always like, well, they got Emilio Pagan still. How could they be elite? They got Pagan in there. If Emilio Pagan is the 7th or 8th guy in the bullpen, all the innings he's going to throw aren't going to matter anyway. So that is my kind of view of the where he fits into the bullpen. And that is where he was in August and September of last season. So as long as we can stay into that scenario to where if Emilio is on the roster, if he has to be on the roster, I would have given up again. Part of me kind of like appreciates how convinced this front office is that he's going to turn it around. Like I wish somebody believed in me as much as Derek Falvey and Thad Levine believe in Emilio Pagan. I don't see it though. So again, I'm not like defending him being around, but I just don't. I don't envision a scenario in which he could be pitching a lot of meaningful innings for the Twins. It's just a lot would have to go wrong. I'm also probably a bit higher on Griffin Jackson. I think a lot of people are. I think most Twins fans, saw that development and how well he pitched. It was like Duran pitched so well and is such a crazy guy to have, kind of overshadowed Jackson a little bit. I think he's actually become a little bit underrated. And you could throw Caleb Thielbar in that mix as well. Giovanni Moran is a guy that I'm still not super comfortable with because he walks so many guys. But, man, he pitched really good for the Twins last year, too. Collins saying 95 wins. I'm saying, hey, if things break as well injury-wise in the right direction as they have in the wrong direction the last few years, that could happen. I could see it. I could see it. But I'm going 88. I put some polls out on Twitter I want to pull up. This is another kind of live reaction, too. I haven't checked in on these yet. I think there's a lot of positivity. I think there is a lot of, there's a lot of guarded optimism, which I think is, if you're a Twins fan, I think that's completely fine. I think we're all kind of, we've been hurt. Let's put it that way. We've all been hurt before. So, oh man, can I not see the results? Let's see. Hold on. I'm working on this here. Let me get this up. I put it out on Twitter, the over-under, which was the Vegas over-under. So that wasn't the number that I was pulling up. This is legit. The current Vegas over-under is 83.5 wins. That seems like a nice number. I mean, again, I'm not a betting man. I'm not saying go out and put money on this. But I'm saying I'm not very shocked to see get my followers again, Twins nutsos. We're all crazy about the Twins. I think the 253 people that have voted on this so far just put this out a little bit before the stream, about an hour and a half. 88.1% are taking the over, 11.9% are taking the under. So, and again, that was on 83.5 wins. With how good and how deep this pitching rotation goes, I feel really good about that. Again, there isn't that guy that you feel great about putting in game one of a playoff series, but over the course of a 162 game season, rotation depth is huge. And this rotation is going to be deep enough to give the Twins a chance to win every game this year. And that's not something we've been able to say for a long time. Personally, I don't think that's something you can say about Cleveland or Chicago. Shane Bieber is the best pitcher in the division. I'm not disputing that. We'll say, though, his velocity was down last year. His strikeouts were down last year. Still incredible. Didn't matter. I'm not saying he's going to fall off. I'm just saying, it's possible. And that, he and Tristan McKenzie, who's kind of been an up and down guy, a little inconsistent, they're tremendous. The rest of that rotation in Cleveland, though, I don't think that goes as far as the Twins does. Like Plesac, Savale had a great second half of last year. And they're going to have some guys probably emerge like they always do. That team is not only really good at development and has a good farm system, but that organization is really good at getting guys to transition from the minor leagues to the big leagues really well. So got off on a little bit of a tangent there, but not going to be counting Cleveland out. Again, I'm saying Twins 88 wins, Cleveland 86 wins. I'm not saying there's going to be some crazy divide here. It's going to be a fight. It's going to be a fun summer. It's kind of like my main tag I've been saying. But I asked also, do the Twins win the AL Central? And 80.1% yes on the 377 votes this has gotten the last 2 hours here. So a lot of optimism shining through, at least through my Twitter followers. Again, obviously this is a very Twin-centric crowd that is voting on these polls. So take that with a grain of salt. But I think it's at least valuable to kind of get a finger on the pulse of how people are feeling in the fan base. How are people feeling about this team? And everybody's feeling pretty good, and I like it. Again, we've been hurt. We were going to guard our optimism some. We still got a lot of movement to do, a lot of growing to do. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, but that's true of every single team across baseball. And I know a lot of people are kind of worried about how this team is kind of shaping up, and some of the guys that aren't up to speed quite yet. And what I would say is like that's life, man. And just because a guy's not ready on open, like let's say Jose Miranda isn't quite up to playing third base on opening day. He's 2 weeks later, he's probably going to be playing third. And I understand a lot of people are nervous because he didn't play there that much last year with the Twins, but he's played there a ton throughout his minor league career. Same thing with like Alex Kirilloff. I'm more concerned about him. I'm more concerned about Alex Kirilloff just because it's been the same injury consistent for so long. He's probably the guy that I have the most like kind of nervous feeling down there about, because he could be a huge X factor for the team. But, he's coming off a bunch of wrist surgeries. If he's not ready on opening day, maybe it's just 2 more weeks, and of course, we know like 3 months from now, this team's going to look a lot different. This team's probably going to look a lot different just 3 months from now, with injuries. And, I've talked about like, don't like where we get so, and me too, we get so hyper focused on the opening day rosters that it kind of, you can lose sight of the fact of some of this stuff. Royce Lewis is going to be playing on the Minnesota Twins at some point this year. Brooks Lee could be possibly playing on the Minnesota Twins at some point later this year. Edouard Julien is going to play way more for the Twins this year than most projection systems have out there. How he's going to do, who knows? It's really hard to predict how guys come into the league. We kind of got a taste of that with Jose Miranda last year. Really got kind of teeth kicked in for a while, took off, then kind of sort of evened out at the end of the year. So there's going to be guys on the pitching side that do that as well. There might be some bullpen emergers, obviously we're looking at things on opening day. I don't see any prospects or rookies. Obviously Giovanni Moran's kind of the youngest guy. I don't see anybody from the prospect side emerging and going into the bullpen right now, but just imagine if somebody from that side does and pitches like Griffin Jax did last year. And that might seem hard to believe, but you wouldn't have believed me if I would have told you Griffin Jax was going to pitch as well as he did last year at this time a year ago when he had just gotten his teeth kicked in as a starter. So that's what I love. I don't really love predictions. I feel like it's good to do them because then, and this is the same feeling I have with prospect lists. Kind of it makes you commit to something. It makes you put something down. So you can say like, oh, I like this team or I like this player. But then when you do a list or do a prediction, it helps. It might help you recalibrate even what, oh, actually, I don't like this guy as much as I thought I did. The point I was trying to get to is, other than this preseason stuff, other than this like projecting opening day rosters and doing all these winning. I like the season, man. That shouldn't surprise anybody since I do content on a daily basis, basically throughout the season. I have for many, many years. I love the season, the flow of the season, seeing these teams evolve and how things come together. It's going to be nuts. That's the only thing I would say. It's going to be nuts. We're looking at this roster right now. It could be dramatically different. Dramatically different. We'll see. It's going to evolve. It's going to change, and I'm really excited to see how it happens. I touched on the pitching staff. On the position player side, I feel really good too about that. And we know Kyle Farmer is not going to be like a star. Michael A. Taylor is not going to be like a star. Donovan Solano is not going to be a star. Ryan Jeffers is on the bench now. Those are the kind of the four main projected bench guys with Nick Gordon. If somebody goes down long term, it's not like those guys can step in and like be all stars or be as good as the guy they would be filling in for. But they are going to help this team from a skid. And I think that might be what determines the AL Central this year. For how long of the season can you play ball at a representative level to your team, basically avoiding slumps? And then you need to have a good streak. That's really what Cleveland did last year. They didn't really have any big slumps, and they got hot for a little while. And that really is what put them over the top. I think that same kind of formula is going to be what wins the AL Central once again this year. And I think the Twins now this season are built way better to avoid that dip. Because that is going to be what crushes whoever in this race, even Chicago. Because again, I don't think this is a great division. I don't think these are like super elite teams. So you cannot afford to go through a big slump. This rotation and the depth are going to really help the Twins in that sort of having a steady, consistent run, avoiding slumps, and then hopefully hitting some points where they're having some nice long win streaks and pushing forward. So that's my feeling. Obviously, we didn't even talk about the big dogs, your Correas, your Buxtons, and I'm not expecting my projection of them winning 88 games, does not expect like a 140 game season out of Byron Buxton. If Byron Buxton is playing 140 games, the Twins are winning over 90 games. I feel pretty confident with that. 88 wins as well from Gabriel. I don't know. I also, it's not like I like went through the schedule, and picked out all the wins or like you broke anything down that far. Again, that's not predictions and that stuff isn't my favorite thing. But that just sort of is what felt right. Yeah, Quantrill, that was the other guy I didn't mention in the Cleveland rotation who just doesn't, he and Plesac and Savale, they're fine, but I just don't. People talk about that team like, oh, their starting rotation, they got so much pitching. I don't know. I don't know. So yeah, that was that covered basically everything I wanted to discuss on the stream. Going to be a shorter one. Again, Jorge Lopez is in the game for Puerto Rico here. I mean, well, maybe we can hang out and test this out. That was actually a lot of these streams. I'm doing something else too. I'm sort of stress testing my internet by live streaming this WBC game and live streaming with you guys at the same time to see how it holds up. Oh boy, Jorge Lopez. I haven't been able to pay as close attention. He has entered the game with the bases loaded and no outs to face Joey Meneses. Ooh. Oh, boy. Big time situation here for Jorge Lopez. It's kind of an easy guy to forget, and I didn't even mention him when we talked about the bullpen. And kind of, I've talked about him before, though, that my expectation for Jorge Lopez seems like too much to expect that he'll be as good as he was in Baltimore. But I think it's pretty hard to suspect that he's going to be as bad as he was with the Twins. because he was not very reliable in his short time with this. Crazy how good he was with Baltimore versus how bad he was with the Twins. So somewhere in the middle, that's a pretty damn good pitcher still. Pretty damn good pitcher if he can kind of meet that in the middle. And just thinking about where the bullpen, and what we can do this with any part of the Twins basically, and say, just think of this element of the team a year ago. And the bullpen is really where I feel like, obviously the rotation's been upgraded and lengthened. But while Taylor Rogers was technically still around a year ago right now, I guess a year ago on opening day, Emilio Pagan, what was a very key piece of the bullpen. You had to be relied on. Oh, and Lopez got a pop out. Huge first out. So that's out number one. And like Tyler Duffy was having to pitch high leverage early last season. Joe Smith was like the highest leverage guy in the staff the first 2 months. And then, two of those three guys got cut later. It was really crazy how much that developed. Speaking of how a roster develops over the course of a season. Oh, what's this going on? I don't have audio on. I'm not sure what exactly is going on, but Jorge Lopez actually is getting a visit by the trainer. I don't dare turn the audio on. I'll probably be put in YouTube jail if I put either live video or audio from a game on. Looks like, is he coming out? Looks like he's staying in there. Again, I'm not sure what that was about. If you're watching this WBC game and you can let me know what the discussion was on potentially what the trainer was out looking at Lopez for. Here's a replay. Don't see anything. It looks unusual. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point from Gabriel. I don't think the Twins infield defense did him much favors during his time here last year either. Hopefully that's better. It's hard to say. I'm always surprised Gio Urshela never grades out very well on the advanced metrics for defense. But I think he's a pretty good defensive third baseman as a playmaker. You can't dispute that. The guy makes some spectacular plays. But I think Miranda might be, at best maybe on par. And then obviously Correa at short, he should be very good. Polanco at second, he's good there. The question is how healthy he is. And kind of much like with Buxton, both those guys coming off of off-season surgeries, I'm not surprised that the Twins have been so careful with them and slow to bring them around. And we are within 2 weeks to opening day, so I think we're going to see those guys soon. But until there was reports of maybe these guys aren't going to be ready, I'm choosing to not really be worried about it and understand the logic behind the Twins not real. I mean, why push them into spring training games? Those guys are pros. Those guys don't need that much ramp up time. And, I think Buxton in particular is such a kind of instinctual hitter. If anything, and I think we saw this during his early career, like if anything, like you want to mess with that guy as little as possible. I don't think he needs a lot of live at bats to get ramped up at the plate. And they're having another mound visit here. Defense at first base, which is something that's not discussed quite as much, could be better. Kirilloff is pretty good there. Obviously, we haven't seen him out there yet, but Joey Gallo, if Kirilloff's out, could be a very nice first baseman. He's looked good there this spring. He moves around a lot better than I always imagined because he's such a big guy, Joey Gallo. Rowdy Tellez up. So Jorge Lopez facing a tough lefty. But he's got that changeup. Woo! Struck him out. Oh, huge. Jorge Lopez. So again, enters this game, bottom of the seventh, bases loaded, no outs. It's a 2-run game. He gets the first batter he faces to pop out. He strikes out the second batter he faces. Rowdy Tellez had a really good year for the Brewers last year. So he is down to the final out to get out of this bases loaded jam. Woo! He's facing Isaac Paredes from the Rays, who had a home run earlier in this game. I think we'll probably end the stream after this at bat. Whatever happens here. Because the one way or another, either Lopez is getting out of this thing or he's giving up a run or two. But I wanted to have this on, and just in case one of the Twins came in a big moment. A lot of Twins on this Puerto Rico team. It's been kind of fun to see them have a run. And that game the other night, Christian Vasquez hit a huge home run. Giovanni Moran got a couple big outs. He also gave up a massive home run to Juan Soto, like a 500-foot homer. But that dude's amazing. Not going to get too bent out of shape about that. Ooh, Lopez has fallen behind 2-0. Ooh. Some Acid Rain is asking about the Bally Sports situation. It sounds like there's really nothing to be worried about. Basically, whatever is happening on the financial end, Bally and Major League Baseball have some kind of an agreement. We don't really know the details on it, that the games will be broadcast throughout the season. They'll figure it out. They'll find a way. Reading kind of between the lines with what I've seen from Dave St. Peter, he makes it sound like, if anything, there's going to be more options that open up as the season progresses, or as basically Major League Baseball gets their hands into that more often. Oh, no! Oh, Paredes drops a kind of a little weak base hit out into left field. 2-run score is tied up. Oh, Jorge couldn't get out of there. Oh, it started so good. Yeah, the bases loaded jam. Oh, man, that would have been cool. Was that just a jam shot? I only saw it come off the bat. Well, it is now tied up. Oh, man. Yeah, I got to watch this game. I got to hear this crowd. I got to hear this crowd. This crowd's probably going insane right now. In Miami. That's one of my favorite parts of the WBC is the crowds are just absolutely buck wild. So we're going to stop the stream there. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Friday evening. I hope you enjoy the rest of your St. Patrick's Day. I hope you enjoy this World Baseball Classic game. Thank you so much for hanging out. And again, Twins win 88 games. Twins win the AL Central. Money in the bank. Stone cold lock. We're going to add more confidence the more times I say it. So, all right. We'll talk again soon. Thank you so much.